All right. I will say hello and welcome back to another episode of The Balance Breakdown. And once again, Lee is not here. This time, he is looking to get a new part in the new Avengers film, but we will carry on without him. We are joined, as always, by the King of Saskatoon, Mr. Ian O'Neill.
Hello.
Hello, sir. And we are joined by the King of Brighton, Mr. Robbie Dizerens.
Hi, Harry. I'm in a sober state of mind. I'm ready to talk about the fights. It's good to be here.
Do it. So
let's go.
I'm going to throw a slight curveball, right? We usually talk about news. We usually talk about that sort of stuff. Me and Robbie had a friendship-changing conversation earlier, and I'm going to bring it to the fore, and I'm going to ask you the question, Ian.
Okay.
If you were going to make beans on toast, Ian, how do you make it?
How do I make beans on toast? Beans on toast used to be a go-to for me for a long time, but how I would make beans on toast now is I think that the beans, if you're going to come at me with beans that are cooked in a microwave, you might as well fucking leave town right now.
Okay, good
because
start.
I ain't gonna accept beans out of a microwave, number one.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta cook that shit in a pot. You gotta cook it up nice and hot, get it going, and then we need to talk about what kind of a bread are we using here.
Yes, this was the crux of the conversation between us.
Was indeed.
I am a little bit of a multi-grain kind of a guy myself. So that's where I'll always lean on it. A bit of bread with a good seed on the crust of it is what we fucking need here. I wouldn't butter it. Butter it now.
Controversial.
No, I agree with Ian here.
But I would not turn my nose up at someone if they offered me some bread with butter on it and put beans on it. But my preference would be just nice thick slices of whole wheat bread. 2, 3, whatever. Beans out of the pot, straight down. That's it. Throw it in.
Toasted bread, non-toasted bread.
No, toasted bread. It's got to be toasted bread.
Okay,
has to be
solid.
Yeah, because I mean, if you don't toast the bread, it's going to like fucking fall asunder and get real super soggy. So, I mean, and even if you want, I don't really like too much burnt toast, but like if you're going on beans on toast, you've got to cook the bread a little bit more than what you maybe normally would, because it will get soggy and stuff like that. So that's what I would do. I wouldn't burn it, but I definitely would put a good brown on the toast.
You want to keep that crisp, yeah.
Keep that crisp going, man.
Are we doing any cheeses? Are we doing any sauces inside the beans? Are we doing any salt and pepper, or are we just going straight bread, straight beans?
I'd say as far as I would go is salt and pepper. We don't want to fuck around with too much shit there. I mean, it's a beautiful mix anyway. Harry is not looking too impressed there. So does he have some kind of fancy recipe he's going to share with us here, or what's going on?
So Robbie, as the intelligent man that he is, he went for a brown malted loaf, a sourdough if you couldn't get a malted loaf, which I agree with, right?
I've really thought through my bread rankings.
We're all on the same page when it comes to bread, right? Which is why we get along, obviously. He then went for sriracha sauce in his beans.
Ooh.
Yes, and I know that's a controversial choice. I know a lot of people swear by brown sauce, but sriracha, I feel, is the way to go.
I'd be a brown sauce man myself now, but not so much when we're dealing with beans and toast. I understand the sriracha gives that little bit of kick. Might have to try that. I'm not going to lie. Might have to give that a go. I am a fan of hot stuff. But you know, I'm really, really of the opinion, and I say this quite a lot about a lot of things, if it ain't broke, don't fucking fix it, man. Sure. Classic beans on toast. Just can't beat it. Maybe a little bit of salt, little bit of pepper if you're feeling a little bit adventurous, but that's about as far as I go.
I think just a little bit, never enough to really measure out the portions, but you want just a bit. But I still swear by an extra mature cheddar. But Harry seems to have his own ideas.
So I like to throw a small bit of goat's cheese in the mix, and let me explain why that is. Because goat cheese is heavily creamy, but it has a really soft, delicate texture alongside quite a strong taste. So obviously we're doing beans in a pot, right? Otherwise you're a crackhead. So beans in a pot, you get a slightly thicker consistency to your beans. You bang in that creamy, and it just makes it that lovely, rich, thick texture of the sauce, and then we can go. Yeah, we're away with the fairies, boys.
I'm telling you guys, you're broadening my horizons here. You know, getting me. I might have to go out there and to the stove after this podcast is finished and cook up a storm here.
Harry, I've got to ask, are you not concerned this is going to completely just destroy your viewership of this video?
I mean, no, because look,
the people need to know.
The people need to know, one, and two, this fight card is really good. You're not going to want to miss any of it. You're going to want to be fueled for this, right?
You sure
What
are.
better way? Go on, Ian, what are you going to say?
Beans on fucking toast, man. You just can't get it. You look at it. Cook them up, cook the toast in the toaster, get the beans on the fucking pot. You can look at it's a meal that you can kind of move around as well. If you need to watch some fights at the same time, you can bring it down onto the couch, you know what I mean? Nothing too fancy. I tell you guys, we're onto something here. And if anybody is not interested in listening to conversations like this, well, we don't want them listening anyway, because these are the conversations that we need to have.
Look, if you aren't appreciative of having a well-rounded service where we nourish your MMA appetite, but we also give you nutritional information, I don't give a fuck about your viewership, frankly. So on that note, we will continue to the vast feast that is UFC 268. Right?
And let us know in the comment section if you want to
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Beans on toast after listening to this conversation.
Because or if anyone has any separate recipes, please feel free to chuck them in. Please feel free.
We're all
I know
ears.
that a Worcester sauce is also a recommendation, but I mean, get the fuck out of here with that stuff. Right. So we just said off air, and I'm just going to repeat it on air because I think it's important. The UFC usually stack cards around this time of year. They have fucking absolutely stacked this one to the brim. I think this is a stacked card for the hardcores, though, because we've talked previously, and let me explain why I say that. We've talked previously, and I'm going to apologize if I keep scratching my chest. I have a new tattoo, and it's really itchy. So Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman is obviously a big fight. However, Kamaru isn't used to selling pay-per-views. He's only just started really gaining the fandom that his skills deserve. Colby Covington is the A side in terms of fan popularity, or at least viewership. Yeah, exactly.
The guys will tune in to see him lose more so than seeing him win, which is the key in pay-per-view sales. I mean, that's what it is. You either get people to tune in to watch you lose or win. All you care about is people tuning in.
Absolutely. Namajunas and Weili Zhang, neither of those are out and out, crossover global stars. However, if you're a hardcore fan, you love both of them. Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler. Okay, look, everyone loves Justin Gaethje. We have the highlight. We have all the stuff, blah, blah, blah. Frankie, Edgar, Marlon, Vera, fine. But, if
even Marlon Vera is an under, I don't know, when you know the sport, he's not really underrated. Everyone knows how good he is. Yeah. He's an underviewed fighter for how exciting he is. He's been sort of like the hardcores. He's been amazing for years, and only since he fought Sean O'Malley has he had anyone viewing him.
Right, and I think the same for Frankie Edgar. You wouldn't really know who Frankie Edgar was if you weren't a hardcore. You wouldn't know about the title runs. You wouldn't know about the weight class changes. You wouldn't know about the Gray Maynard fights, right? And then, Shane Burgos, Billy Quarantillo, obviously a banger. Edman Shabazayen versus Nassourdine Imavov. Iaquinta versus Bobby Green, which is literally a hardcore's fucking fight in it. That you put in the beans on toast and it fucking tastes insane, right? That is
if you were to describe a fight in relation to some food, that's the fight. Bobby Green as the beans on toast. He always brings the beans on toast in his fights and makes it exciting for everybody.
He does. And then, we move down the card and, obviously we've got Ian Gary making his UFC debut. We've got Alex Pereira making his UFC debut. And then a couple of other names, but let's just jump right in. Right. So let's set the scene for Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington. Kamaru wins the title. Colby is on an absolute fucking barn burner of a run, creates this persona. Kamaru isn't known for his finishes. The first fight was absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Neither guy wanted to wrestle. Both guys showed off their striking ability. For me, the tale of the first fight was physicality and power. Kamaru had a little bit more power in his punches. managed to really damage Colby in the latter rounds, finished him in the 5th. Cool. Colby goes away, changes team, moves away from American Top Team. Kamaru Usman does the same thing. He goes to Trevor Whitman. Colby Covington. Who's Colby Covington training with again?
I'm not quite sure. He's kind of been floating around it. Yeah, I think so.
Someone must like him.
Have to confirm that.
Jesus. I mean, just to slightly go over this, right? Because I think it is MMA Masters, isn't it? It is MMA Masters.
It is.
Me pulling that out of my fucking brain. Colby Covington, for all intents and purposes, supposedly, as a man outside of fighting, is a lovely guy, just a regular guy. He just understood that he had a shtick and plays it up. Whether he actually truly believes any of the things that he says is up for debate, right? But as we've already spoken about, I don't care about that stuff, really. What I care about is fighter A versus fighter B, skill set versus skill set. And this is phenomenal. Like, there's a lot of fighters that I love to watch fight that I may not like in person. Do you know what I mean? And vice versa. There are some people that I think are stinkers of fighters, but I'm sure they're beautiful people, right? So
most good people I know are terrible fighters, but
right. Yeah.
Most people I know are terrible fighters, so you know.
Sure. So I think with Colby Covington, as Ian alluded to at the start, as long as people tune in to watch you fight, who gives a fuck? You're getting paid, yeah? And that's all that matters, right? This is prize fighting at the end of the day. So I will open the floor here to whether anyone has any initial thoughts about how the fight will look second time around. Who wants to go first?
Well, I'd say I just wanted to do a slight bit more recap. I still don't understand why Colby Covington has managed to get this shot. He fought once last year against the ghost of Tyron Woodley, who admittedly he beat very clearly.
Handily, yeah.
But also, yeah, because...
Well, let me help you with that. The OG of Irish MMA media, Mr. Graham McDonnell, said something extremely insightful in a recent live stream that we were doing for Severe MMA, right? And what he said was, people forget that the UFC is not a fucking league, yeah? It's prize fighting. It's not about, oh, well, I'm number 7, so I'm going to fight number 6. And, oh, I'm number 5, so I can fight number 4, or I can fight number 6. No, it's not that, yeah? It's who gets bums on seats, who gets eyes on screens, right? Colby Covington does that. So it doesn't matter. This isn't a meritocracy. This isn't, unfortunately, right? I do think in some ways it is, right? If you beat a couple of guys at the lower ranks, you're going to get pushed up. If you beat enough guys, you'll get top 15. But as soon as you hit the top 15, meritocracy just goes out the window, right? If meritocracy was a thing, Beneil Dariush would have had a title shot. Leon Edwards would have had a title shot, right? But that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen, right? So that's the answer to your question. Colby Covington is insanely controversial. People love to hate him. People hate to love him. He gets a title shot, right? And
the first fight between these two guys was a fantastic fight and a relatively close fight as well. You know, there was a few people who had Colby Covington up at the time, or at least had the fight at 2-2 heading into the last round. So, I mean, Dana White came out and said at the a recent press conference that Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman was one of his favorite fights to watch of all time. And I think he had a kind of an egg in his ass to make this rematch as well. Colby Covington has come out and spoken about Kamaru Usman not wanting this fight, that the UFC has gone and made it happen, that it wasn't from Usman's side. I don't know whether you want to believe that or not, but I definitely do think that Dana White, UFC, was pushing this fight. Yes, you have to agree that Leon Edwards may feel a little bit hard done by not to being given the shot. But like Harry said, we're not talking about leagues here. We're talking about entertainment fights, guys who are going to sell fights and guys who are going to put bums in seats and guys that are going to sell pay-per-views. We're on about needle movers. And that seems to be the trend always with the UFC. And we're going to see it again down the line. And sometimes it can be frustrating, but I'm happy this fight is happening for one. I think it's going to be a fantastic fight. And I'm curious to see what change-ups and what differences that Colby Covington brings in here. Will he try to utilize his wrestling more? Will he try and stand and bang with him? You know, I I spoke about this earlier on this week where I was thinking that now, speaking about Colby Covington speaking out publicly, now you can always take everything that he says with a pinch of salt. So, but he himself reckoned that he was winning that first fight. So if he has that mentality that he was really winning that fight, if he really truly believes that he won that fight, then I can't see him coming up here and changing up all that much. And if that's the case, I think he's going to create his own downfall, because I think that Kamaru Usman has improved extensively as a fighter. And I think that his work in the striking department has improved exponentially since that first fight. I believe that he puts himself in a much better positions to land his power shots now, does Kamaru Usman. And it'll be very difficult for Colby Covington to fight a fire versus fire fight. A firefight with Kamaru Usman is not the way to go here.
That's the question, isn't it? Because we've seen Kamaru Usman fight a fair few, I don't even know how many times. I think he's fought a few times since, hasn't he? 3 times. We've seen Colby Covington once and against, again, Tyron Woodley. Not much can be told from that fight. And Kamaru Usman's obviously improved considerably striking. That said, if Colby Covington's strategy the whole time was to come back to face Kamaru Usman, you know how they say the champion everyone's got their eyes on them, everyone's planning how to beat him. Colby might have had pretty much the entire year to work on whatever skills he thinks are specific to beating Kamaru.
I don't think this fight's going to be close at all. Hot take. I think Kamaru gets it done quicker this time than he did last time.
Yeah,
I would tend to have to agree with that point as well, Harry. I mean, if you're Kamaru Usman here, you're definitely going to be wanting to come into this fight and better that first performance to really put a stamp on that win. And you're going to want for no questions after the fight. And the only way you can do that is going in there and getting your opponent out of there.
So my thoughts on this fight are, we've watched Kamaru Usman bolt together a skill set over the last 6 years that he's been in the UFC, from being purely a wrestler with zero striking to then bolting on striking to setting up his grappling, to now being an all-round proficient MMA fighter, right? He stood and banged with Jorge Masvidal the second time, and look what happened. His footwork, for me, has probably been the biggest improvement. His ability to cut the cage off, set feints with his feet, be elusive on the feet, and then land his power shots is unbelievable. Because if you're a fighter, you know Kamaru Usman's wheelhouse is the grappling, right? You know that. So almost always fighters are going to fight with their hands just a little lower, just a touch lower, so they can get underhooks if he shoots. They need to make frames if he's going to drive them to the cage, etc., etc. So what does that do? Well, that allows Kamaru Usman's hands to flow a little bit easier, his kicks to flow a little bit easier. And the footwork that he uses is often faking shots, level changes, ducking left and right, moving his head to fake grappling exchanges to land his shots. Do I think that Colby is going to wrestle in this fight? I don't know. It'd be very interesting if he does, because if he does get Kamaru to his back, that's a question we haven't really seen answered. So that will be very interesting. However, the reason he didn't try to take Kamaru down last time was why?
He was he had a good bit of success on the feet, and he thought he was winning the fight, I think. So, and why he didn't grapple him the last time, maybe he just doesn't fancy his chances against someone as powerful as Kamaru Usman, who is really, really strong in the clinch as well.
So my answer is energy expenditure, right? When you get in that cage, especially over 25 minutes, everyone only has a certain gas tank. Colby Covington might have the best gas tank we've ever seen in MMA, right? However, even he was like, fuck this noise. Like, getting him to the mat might cost me so much energy and I may not be able to keep him there. Risk versus reward doesn't make sense. Has Colby gotten so much better in the grappling realms over the last year? I can't see it. He's already a fantastic grappler. What's he going to have added to his game that's going to cause Kamaru Usman more problems?
Yeah,
It's a fair shout. That kind of level, it's hard to. It's incrementally small gains, I guess. There's not much you can.
Insanely small gains, right?
And I'm of the same opinion here as looking in at, like, if you're trying to game plan as for Colby Covington's team, is like, yeah, you want to try and keep Kamaru Usman guessing and stuff like that. But like, if you initiate the grappling, you're more than likely going to lose against Kamaru Usman because he's just so strong in the clinch. Like, and he just has an ability to control the fight, and he forces guys to fight his fight time and time again. Yeah. And just to maybe piggyback off what you said about Kamaru Usman's footwork is spot on as well. I think that work with Trevor Whitman has really paid dividends with him. Whereas that he had that power and he carried that power, but he didn't know how to use it. And it seems that he is developing the skills right now, and we've seen the fruits of that labor in these previous fights as well, where he has knocked out Masvidal, where he has knocked out Gilbert Burns as well. So, I mean, that's not going to be too good for Colby Covington in this fight either as well. And I think that eventually he is going to accumulate a certain level of damage, and more than likely, I'm the same as you guys. I just can't see any improvement or any way that he can get this job done from what I've seen from the first fight or what I've seen since or after him.
So my only thoughts, right? In the first fight, what I did see was Colby was quicker. Not by a lot, but he was quicker. Now, that's probably because on fight night, he's the lighter man, right? He's carrying less muscle mass. If he can put together a stick and move game plan, whereas Kamaru, right, in the first fight, takes the center of the cage and wants to stay there. If you can make Kamaru follow you, don't get me wrong, it's risky. You're testing Kamaru's footwork. But if you can make him follow you and catch him as he's coming in, stick and move, maybe you can win a couple of rounds and try and change the dynamic. However, that would mean Colby learning an entirely new skill set. One, fighting backwards. Two, striking, fighting backwards, right? Very, very difficult. Now, a year's a long time, and Colby's a fantastic fighter. So can he do it? Of course he can. Do I think he will? Absolutely not. I feel as though this is Kamaru's fight to lose. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Not too much. I mean, if we were going to start on predictions, my prediction would be in this fight would be Colby Covington is probably going to come in and fight a similar enough fight to what he fought in this first fight with Kamaru Usman, and that's not going to bode too well. I think that Kamaru Usman is going to come in here with a little bit of chip on his shoulder of wanting to shut Colby up finally. He's going to want to better that first result, and I would expect him to get the knockout in round 3 or round 4 in this fight.
God, that's so frustrating. My answer was round 3 finish for Kamaru Usman. Robbie?
It's brown bread. Round 3 finish.
All right. Yeah. Wicked. The one thing I will say, if I'm Colby Covington, he didn't do it in the first fight, but Kamaru Usman is known for having terrible knees.
Just leg kick the shit out of him.
Just leg kick the shit out of him.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Very good point.
Colby is a volume hitter. Not a big hitter, but a volume hitter. If he's willing to land a couple, take one, but as Kamaru is throwing that right hand, land a fucking disgusting low kick and keep doing that, that will add up. But yeah.
Not to get back onto that fight, but if he is concerned about the grappling, if he doesn't want to give it a try, throwing leg kicks against someone you're concerned is going to wrestle you is a bold move.
It is a bold move, but what else are you going to do?
Yep, fine. He's got to change. Well, he should change something, but yeah, you might be right here, and he might think he was winning with his old strategy and just stick with it.
So we'll move on to Rose Namajunas and Weili Zhang. Now, Rose Namajunas might be one of my favorite fighters of all time, so I'm going to talk not very much in this because I'm insanely biased. But I will open it up. Robbie and Ian, what do you think about this fight? How do you think it goes?
Well, the one thing I'd say is I don't think that first fight was very telling in any way, really. It wasn't long enough. It wasn't like Rose was setting up this specific technical fight. She might be working on it hard in training camp, but it's not like she was obviously setting it up to a huge degree within, what was it, 1:18 seconds? The first fight was not long enough to tell. I think anyone's opinion of this probably shouldn't have changed from who they thought was going to win the first time round.
My opinion has changed, but go on, Ian.
Oh,
mine has a little bit, because what I was kind of caught up on in the first fight was what mentality that Rose Namajunas was going to bring into the fight. And I was very high, and I still am very high on Zhang Weili as a fighter. I think she's an absolutely phenomenal fighter. But after picking Zhang Weili in that first fight, when I seen Rose standing in that octagon in that first fight, just mouthing the words, "I'm the best, I am the best, I'm the best," I knew at that stage that she was on, and Tug Rose was in that cage, and she was mentally ready. So the fruits of that labor was shown in that first fight when she comes in and she is on. She is one of the most dangerous fighters in the world, but she always battled with those demons, and she seems to have a much better grasp on them now. And I do kind of agree with Robbie in what he said, is that I feel that we are going to see the fight this time around that we were expecting to see in the first fight. And I would feel that this fight will go a lot. I would think that would go a lot longer, but then again, you just don't know. You've got two women here that carry some big power. But like, if you're Zhang Weili, you're going to be playing it safe, I feel, in the opening stages of this fight again, given what happened in the first fight. Like, are you going to be wanting to rush in and leave yourself open and get counter-struck? We don't know how Zhang Weili or how she's going to react from being knocked out like that. You know, she hasn't suffered a knockout like that ever, I don't think. And, you know, fighters react differently after. You know, we've seen it time and time again. So if I'm Zhang Weili and I'm her team coming into this fight, I am going to be looking to try and bring Rose into deep waters. I'm going to try and slowly push the pace in this fight. You know, before that last fight, we've seen Rose Namajunas go up against Jessica Andrade, where she did kind of tire out a little bit. Now, Andrade is a wrestler, and there was a lot of grappling initiated in that fight, which does drain the gas tank, like we talked about with Covington and Usman as well. But I'm thinking that maybe Rose might gas out, maybe not gas out, but tire out or be less explosive in rounds 4 or 5. Maybe a little bit of pop might come off her strikes as well. So, you know, I'm just looking at it from Zhang Weili's kind of perspective, is that, do I want to throw myself right into the firing line in the early stages of this fight? Or do I want to play the long game and slowly turn up the pressure and make this into a 5-round war? And if it turns into a 5-round war, anything could happen and anybody could take this fight. And I'm really, really, really looking forward to watching this. I mean, this is one of the highlights on the card for me, for sure.
I think you've highlighted there all of the really important points. However, we know that Rose, how do I put this the best way? You don't want Rose to start a rhythm, right? We saw in the first round against Jessica Andrade, if you allow Rose to move her feet and land her shots, it's it's basically on Rose's choice. If Rose makes a mistake or her gas tank falters, that you come back into the fight. It is so hard to turn that tide. Now, in the first fight, we did see Zhang Weili land a few shots, and you could tell very early the power in just straight shots, and just your 50%, 60% shot power is very different. Weili Zhang packs big power, right?
And that will stand to her too if the fight goes, if we're talking about decisions here, we're talking about immediately impactful strikes that will score in this fight. And those will definitely come more from Zhang Weili than they will from Rose Namajunas.
I agree. I think if we're going to a decision, I'm picking Rose Namajunas. If we're going for a finish, I think I'm picking Zhang Weili.
Ooh.
I I see where you're coming from. There's one other thing I wanted to check. Was this last fight the one where Zhang Weili's camp was absolutely fucked?
Yes.
Not this time round, is it?
No. I don't know about the last fight with Rose Namajunas, but the one before that against Johanna, she had to change her camp four occasions. The last one, the biggest thing with Zhang Weili that she has said after the fight was a little bit of shit talk that Rose got to her a little bit, and also the fact that she was booed by the whole stadium, she said played an effect on her as well. So, I mean, those are red flags too, if you ask me. Is like, how strong is she mentally?
Red flags.
So, Jesus. Jesus Christ.
So, I mean, that's another little factor. Like, we simply don't know because we didn't see enough of that first fight, and we don't know going into this, was Zhang Weili just caught, or was she leaving herself open for something, or did Rose Namajunas kind of expose her in certain ways on the feet? Now, we'll probably find out a little bit more of those answers coming into the second fight here, but I'm very curious as to hearing what Harry has to say in regards to, I would be thinking along the other lines that I would be Rose Namajunas that would be looking to get a finish early, and if it was to go to a decision, I think it would probably lean towards Zhang Weili, being based off the fact that she throws heavy strikes and they are very impactful strikes, nearly almost of all of her shots that she throws.
So I think Rose, if Zhang Weili is going to come in and say, I'm going to bide my time a little bit, take her into deep waters, reserve my gas tank and try and put the pressure on late. If you are willing to give up a round or two to Rose, the steam that she will build will take rounds away from you. If you're banking on Rose, and this is why I think if we're looking at a finish, it'll be Zhang Weili.
I don't mean, just to be the devil's advocate on that a little bit, she did win rounds 1 and 2 against Jessica Andrade and then kind of fade away in round 3.
This is my point, right? So if I'm Rose Namajunas, I'm thinking all I really need to do is win 3 rounds here, right? If I know that I can't trust my gas tank to go 5 hard 5s at the same pace I put in the first, I just need to win 3. And if I can win 3, I can do my best to coast. I'll grapple, I'll play possum, whatever, and I'll grind my way out to a 3-2, right? Well, if Zhang Weili comes in here and is like, well, I'm going to put my eggs in the same basket, I'm going to try and finish you late when you tire. Well, you're essentially giving Rose those first 3 rounds, right? Now, where I see this is, this is why I think Zhang may finish late, is Rose was getting pieced up against Andrade in that 3rd round, right? Pieced up. You don't want to be letting Zhang Weili hit you with the same ferocity in the same place. Now, the other question here is about mentality. And I actually think way more than technically, I think this fight is a fight of brain. Can Rose stay Thug Rose for 5 rounds? How does Zhang Weili cope if she drops 3 rounds and has to pull out a finish? How do those mentalities blend together? Now, I don't think we can question Zhang Weili's toughness or heart. We all watched that Ioane and Jacek fight, right? One of the fights of all time. Both ladies were put through absolute hell. However, Rose Namajunas can hit way harder than Ioane and Jacek. So if it's like, I don't know. This is such a tough fight to call.
It's crazy. Personally. It's crazy to call. I think for me too. I mean, it's such a hard one to call because we just didn't see enough in the first fight. Like we're kind of talking about it in similar enough fashion as what we did talk about in the first fight, because we were 100%. On here talking about it, and there just was there's still so many questions that have gone unanswered. So that's what makes me excited about watching this rematch. And I think another factor that may come into account is that nobody is talking too much about the underrated grappling skills of Rose Namajunas, which are phenomenal as well. She's an amazing grappler, and maybe that was in her game plan too. She might want to initiate some grappling herself against Zhang Weili. We don't know that. We didn't get to see that fight play out as much as we would have liked it the first time. So there's a bunch of different factors coming into this fight, and it's a phenomenal matchup. It's going to be a barn burner, I think, if it goes 5 rounds, and it definitely would be one of the favorites for fight of the nights if it goes all the way as well.
Just one thing as well. Rose Namajunas has just turned 29. 29.
Crazy.
I mean, Jesus fucking.
And
anyway,
I think most of her fights are title fights as well, if we're not mistaken. Hey,
yeah,
a lot of them. Yeah, a lot of them.
It must be like one of the highest proportions.
So she debuted again. Well, she did the Ultimate Fighter, right? Whatever. Then she fought Angela Hill, non-title fight. Van Zandt, non-title fight. Torres, non-title fight. Karolina Kowalkiewicz, non-title fight. Michelle Waterson, non-title fight. Then she fought Joanna Jędrzejczyk for the title. Then she rematched Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Then she lost to Andrade in a title fight. Then she fought Andrade non-title fight. And now she's fighting. She knocked out Weili Zhang title fight, and now it's title fight again. Jesus. And then if we're not talking about Invicta as well, because there's fucking bouts in there and all. So yeah, look, let's move to picks, right? Because we could talk, and then I'll give my justification for my pick, and that'll be my last bit. But Robbie, do you want to go first on a pick?
You know what? I really love Rose, but I think I'm picking Weili Zhang. Or Zhang Weili. Still confused about which way around those names go.
Yeah.
No one can make up their mind. Yeah, glory to communism. I think it's going to be the red flag.
So...
late stoppage as well.
Ian? We've lost Ian. So
the talk of communism has struck fear into his heart.
Yeah, it's when he said red flags that... China have just destroyed his internet connection. I am going to pick Rose Namajunas via 4th round submission. The reason why I pick that is because when I look at the styles as styles, Zhang Weili is a very front foot heavy, Muay Thai, plod forward, land big shots type of fighter, right? And the reason you see a big, beautiful war like you did against Joanna Jędrzejczyk is Joanna Jędrzejczyk is a similar sort of fighter. Muay Thai based, very heavy on her teeps and her straight shots and whatever, right? Rose Namajunas is not that. Look at the way that Namajunas knocked out Jędrzejczyk. Beautiful lateral step and a left hook right behind the guard. Beautiful, fantastic. One of the cleanest left hooks you'll see. I feel as though the smart thing for Zhang Weili to do here would be to come in and try and bull rush her in the first round. Try and push Rose Namajunas to the edge of her mental capacity early. I don't think she will do that. I think that she's going to come in and be like, right, I got caught really early in this first round. Let me just hang out, see how it goes, play it by ear, and ease my way into the fight. You don't want to do that against Rose Namajunas. If Rose Namajunas, as I've already said, sets the pace, gets her footwork going and lands her shots, you have a serious tide to turn. So for me, I will go Rose Namajunas late sub. But the reason why I'll go late sub is I think if Zhang Weili does turn up the pace, you will see Rose lean on her grappling. And I don't think the grappling is anywhere near close in terms of its skill set. So I'll take Rose Namajunas via late submission. Ian, what's your pick?
Yeah, apologies. I lost connection there for a second. My prediction for this fight, and I mean, it's a toss-up for me on who's going to win. I think that my pick would be Zhang Weili to win by decision.
Interesting.
Because I think that she will kind of turn up the pace as the fight goes on. And she will probably be landing the more impactful strikes throughout the fight, which is probably going to give her the nod on the judges' scorecards if it goes that way. And that's a big if we see the final bell.
For the first time ever, I believe, we've all picked different ways this fight could go.
Yeah, it just shows you, right?
And I apologize, Robbie. I missed your pick. What was your pick again? Just
he loves communism.
Yes. Glory to communism. I think Zhang Weili will finish her quite late. I think, though, out of just about any of the main or co-main events that we've had for a long time, this is the one that's most uncertain about how it's going to go. I think that plays through in how we've all gone different ways with the picks.
And I just want to wrap something up slightly before we close. Ian, in Rose Namajunas' UFC tenure, she has only fought twice outside of main event or co-main event.
Wow. Yeah, that was something like the stat I was thinking of as well. So that's absolutely crazy. So
yeah. So she debuted against Carla Esparza, main event. She then fought Angela Hill on the prelims. Paige Van Zandt, main event. Tisha Torres, co-main. Karolina Kowalkiewicz, co-main. Michelle Waterson, co-main. Joanna Jacek, main. That was the only other one, main card, right? That was her first knockout, but that was the third fight because it was on UFC 217, right? Then Joanna Jacek rematch, co-main. Andrade, main event. Jessica Andrade again, and then Weili Zhang co-main. Like, that is insane.
Ridiculous.
Insane.
And still only 29 years of age, and still probably going to be coming into her prime over the next couple of years as well. So I mean, we better get used to seeing Rose Namajunas at the top of the 115-pound division. Whether she wins this fight, whether she loses it, she's going to be thereabouts anyway.
I agree. I mean, just to close this out, if Rose loses this fight, they obviously do the third, right? Because there's nobody else there.
Yeah,
that's the one thing. Yeah.
Right. That's it. But like, we're definitely going to see a trilogy here, and poor Carla Esparza is probably going to be left out in the cold. And if Rose Namajunas gets the job done, it'll probably bode well for Esparza, having fought and beaten Rose Namajunas already. So she's waiting in the wings. But I think that if you're Carla Esparza, you're hoping for a Rose Namajunas win here and not a Zhang Weili.
For sure. So we'll move on to Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler. I think this is a pretty simple fight to call, in my opinion. Does anyone want to start, or are you happy for me to go?
I wouldn't say it's a pretty simple fight. It's a very intriguing fight for me. I mean, I think that this is, and I said it, I recorded an episode of the Sweet MMA podcast with Sean, and I said this on that podcast, and say the same here. I think this is going to be a fight where we're going to have to put the kids to bed before it goes down, because I think it's going to be bloody and violent. And I think there's going to be a lot of heavy shots thrown, and there's going to be cuts and grazes, and these two boys are just going to go at it hammer and tongue. And it's going to be a very interesting clash. I think it's down to which fighter is going to be on the front foot is going to be the more successful fight in this fight. What we've seen with Michael Chandler is that his ability to cut off the cage is very good, and is similar enough to Kamaru Usman, where he will corner a guy in order to get off his big shots. He's not a better striker than Justin Gaethje, but he probably has bigger, better one-punch knockout power, and that's what he's going to try to get off on Justin Gaethje here. If you're Justin Gaethje, how you counter that is that you kick the fucking leg off of Mike Chandler. You kick his fucking leg asunder. He's had trouble with his legs before. You kick that calf, you stop that movement, you kill that power, you win this fight. That's the simple assessment from me.
So the reason why I think it's pretty simple to call is Justin Gaethje still has LFA Gaethje in his back pocket. Still has World Series of Fighting Gaethje in his back pocket, right? We know Gaethje has a chin, yeah? We've seen the wars he's been in. If we look at Michael Chandler, Patricio Pitbull absolutely destroyed him. Charles Oliveira made relatively quick work, right? In that second round, beautiful strikes, beautiful finish. Brent Primus, okay. The leg, whatever. Close fight to Benson Henderson, who's a good leg kicker, right? And then you've got the Will Brooks losses when Will Brooks was actually good, right? I feel like Gaethje, if he doesn't want to take a back step, He just won't. So what are you going to do?
I know exactly what you're going to do, because we know what Justin Gaethje is as a striker, but we also know what he is as a grappler now, because he was massively, massively exposed in the Khabib fight.
Yes,
and
does Chandler know jiu-jitsu? Just any
or even
jiu-jitsu?
just put him down on his back, and if you're eating and you're going too much punishment, that what I would do if I'm Michael Chandler here, I initiate that grappling and I try to get top control and dominate him down there.
If I'm Michael Chandler, I'm going to be going for those takedowns irrespective, because that's one of the things that Justin Gaethje has really struggled with. Not that he gets taken down easily, but I think he has commented on it. The reason he doesn't wrestle is because it fucking tires him out. Every time that people go for takedowns, he just seems to expend so much energy either fighting them off or getting back to his feet that he gets absolutely exhausted by the end of it. Poirier used that strategy beautifully against him. If I'm Chandler, I'm going for those fucking takedowns. Just keep them going through the fight. It's going to exhaust him.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because Gaethje's spoken about, so often that his defensive wrestling is so good, but we haven't really seen it.
No.
We haven't really. I mean, Khabib, to me, you can quite happily put an asterisk above that, because nobody stops the takedown. Not one person stops the takedown.
But I mean the easiness that he got into those positions.
So that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say afterwards is there's no defense, though, for how poor he looked when it did hit the mat, right? It's all well and good to be a fantastic defensive grappler. Khabib's going to put you on your back anyway. But when you get there, to look like a 6-month white belt is not okay, right? It's not acceptable. So...
acceptable.
I mean, it's not, though. If you're a high-level fighter fighting for one of the most coveted titles in MMA, right? 155-pound title is one of the most coveted titles in all of MMA, especially in the UFC. And you look like you could get beat at an All-Stars comp in London. That's like, come on. Like, that's not...
Yeah, in my opinion, he was massively exposed as a grappler in that fight. And what also you said as well, Harry, is that he hasn't been fighting these wrestlers. You look at his history inside the UFC, where he's fighting the likes of Alvarez and Michael Johnson, Dustin Poirier, James Vick, Edson Barbosa, Donald Cerrone, and Tony Ferguson. Those are all guys that are going to stand in front of you and want to bang. And those fights suit Justin Gaethje down to a T. What doesn't suit him down is him being put on his back and him being pressured in top control. We've seen how he reacted in that against Khabib now, and obviously he's been doing some work. But I mean, when you're talking about the elite level competition in the lightweight division, I don't know, you're going to need to put in a fucking shit ton of work from what I've seen against Khabib. Now, we're talking about Khabib being a world star grappler, the best ever to do it. Michael Chandler isn't on that level, but I would put him down as a better wrestler and a better grappler from what I've seen from Justin Gaethje in the past.
Could I throw a curveball in? Who's Justin Gaethje's main training partner for this camp?
Kamaru Usman.
Yeah.
How many? We've all seen the scramble videos of Kamaru Usman and Michael Chandler, right? We've all seen them. If there's a man that can help Justin Gaethje win this fight more than Kamaru Usman, show me them.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point too. But I mean, it doesn't always add up that way. I'm
sure
Kamaru Usman was preparing him for the Khabib fight as well. So.
Sure. I mean, I would say there isn't much better of a training partner you could get if you're looking to stop grappling, especially conventional grappling, right? Not the Dagestani version, but the American version. You've got an absolute lethal weapon in your training camp to help you stop it.
I see what you're saying, but I just don't know how much impact those training partners often have. To be honest, it's good, sure, but is it enough to sort of change who I think is going to win this fight? Not that much.
Well, all right, big boy. Let's go to picks then.
I think Chandler's going to get this one. Honestly, I think Chandler will use a lot of wrestling, whether it's to put Justin Gaethje on his back or whether it's to tire him out long term. I think Chandler will take it.
Ian?
I am of the same opinion of that. I think that Chandler is going to talk a big game coming in here about wanting to stand and bang and everything like that. But I think if he's smart, he's going to go in there and want to grapple from the get-go, and he's going to want to put Justin Gaethje on his back. He's going to want to tire him out. He's going to want to let him get up a little bit and take him down again and break his spirit, make him frustrated. Then maybe in the later stages of the fight, he can stand and bang when maybe Gaethje doesn't have as much pop. I'm not completely ruling out Justin Gaethje. I mean, the keys to success for him is getting on the front foot and kind of enforcing his way into this fight, landing those calf kicks, landing those big shots, getting Mike Chandler backed up against the fence. And just, he has to stay off the mat here in this fight. And if he can't do that, I think Michael Chandler is going to win, and he's going to win a decision. I think if the fight doesn't make it, I think I would see Justin Gaethje being the one who finishes the fight. But my ultimate prediction is Mike Chandler by unanimous decision.
Justin Gaethje's second round knockout. Let's fucking go.
Let's have some fucking fun.
I just think that you're absolutely, both of you are absolutely right. If Chandler has any ounce of smarts here, you don't look for a war against Justin Gaethje. You just don't, right? Like, unless you're Dustin Poirier, who was like, fuck it, go on, let's have a war, right? Like, why not? Let's have a war.
But what Gaethje is actually very good at doing in fights is drawing his opponent into those kind of fights.
Right. So this is basically where I was going with my point. Eddie Alvarez the same. He's like, you want to? Okay, yeah, cool, no problems, let's go. Like, other fighters, like, look at the Edson Barbosa fight, the Donald Cerrone fight. It's always like, their fights are wars. They're not. They're controlled by whoever it is, right? They're controlled. Barbosa just puts beatings on people, and Gaethje's like, okay, watch, murders him, right? Cerrone the same. Cerrone, as you know, well, Cerrone is slight asterisk. If you hit him early, he just fades. But Tony Ferguson the same. I feel with Chandler as though he's going to come in thinking one thing, and if Gaethje is anywhere near, because this is the only other wrinkle that I have that I don't really know, is what does Gaethje look like confidence-wise coming in here after what happened against Khabib? I don't know. I really don't know. But if he comes in looking anything like he looked against Tony Ferguson, I don't think this is a good night for Michael Chandler. I really don't. But we'll see. We will see. We'll move on again to the hardcore's wet dream, and that is Frankie Edgar versus Marlon Vera. Ian, what do you think about this?
I think that if I'm wanting to see Frankie Edgar get in there and fight someone, I would be picking somebody like Marlon Vera, who is not an elite level fighter right now. Don't know if he will accumulate to that eventually, but also another guy who doesn't carry big power either. And I think it's a good matchup for Frankie at his stage in his career. He's not going in against a big hitter. We've seen him getting devastatingly knocked out. I would be of the opinion, and I would be very happy if I didn't have to watch Frankie Edgar fight at all at this stage of his career. I don't think he owes us as fans anything. But yeah, here we are. He's fighting Marlon Vera, and I think that it's a winnable fight for him. I'm curious to see how he looks. You know, his footwork, his boxing is always good, but the fact of the matter is his chin is gone now, and it'll be all up to whether Chito Vera can catch him or if he has the power to catch him. I'd be surprised. Vera is going to be successful at times on the feet, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of game plan Frankie brings, because if you're talking about Frankie Edgar that we've seen in the past, and if he doesn't have the confidence in his chin anymore, then he needs to be utilizing his wrestling coming into this fight too. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
I think that Vera works the body too well to not hurt Frankie here. His front teep to that solar plexus is unbelievable. The body work generally, when he finishes combinations to the body, when he goes to the body mid combination, is just so crisp. And if Frankie's going to look to wrestle, his hands are going to be lower. If he's getting hit to the body a lot, he's going to get hit again and again and again. For a man that had never been knocked out, Gray Maynard fights, all of that stuff, all the wars he's been in, never get knocked out. In the last 6 fights, he's been finished 3 times. What does that tell you? You know what I mean?
I just want Frankie to do well. Like it was, I loved him so much before, and now I'm just.
He'll do well by retiring. Genuinely, and I don't mean that as a joke. I don't mean that nastily. I mean that very, very genuinely. He will do that. He will do well by retiring. Don't tarnish the amazing legacy that you already have. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
It somewhat is a little bit tarnished already. I mean, you know, like you mentioned it at the start of this podcast, no one is going to remember the Frankie Edgar that fought the Gray Maynard fights.
You're right.
Or the ones, you know what I mean? No one's going to remember that. Everyone remembers, our memories are recent, him getting devastatingly knocked out with Brian Ortega and Corey Sandhagen. I mean, the damage that man took alone in the Gray Maynard fights in the first rounds in both of those fights was extensive amount of damage. And the fact that he went through and stayed fighting those bigger guys and moved down and then moved down again, and he's still here fighting good guys, is a credit to him as an athlete. But, you know, you can train all you want. You can do this, you can do that, but your body tells you when it's time to stop. And Frankie Edgar's body is telling him to stop right now because he can't absorb the same amount of punishment that he used to be able to do. But I do still think that this is a winnable fight. We have to remember that it was only a year ago where he picked up a win. Yes, it was a split decision win, but he did pick up a win against Pedro Munoz, who is a pretty solid fighter too. And
absolutely.
I know MMA math isn't the best, but like, who would you have in a fight between Munoz and Vera? Now, I would think it would be a close fight. I think they're similar enough skills. I do think Vera does have things in the tank and he'll have that extra bit of hunger. And this is going to be the biggest fight of Marlon Vera's career. So it'll be up to him to take the bull by the horns in this fight.
So I have a couple of things. The first thing is he loses to Brian Ortega. Frankie loses to Brian Ortega, devastatingly. Comes back, beats Cub Swanson. Gets beaten from pillar to post by Max Holloway. And I mean pillar to fucking post, ground into the fucking dirt. He then goes out and gets destroyed by the Korean Zombie. Comes back, cuts more weight, which we know does no good things for your chin, and goes down and fights Pedro Munoz, who isn't the biggest hitter, right? But has some power. Fine. Split decision, whoever you pick that fight for, whatever. Then goes in and gets absolutely whacked by Corey Sandhagen, right? How can we think that anything else is going to happen? Your man turned 40 20 days ago.
Oh, is he actually?
40. Marlon Vera just turned 28.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go back to it once again. The Corey Sandhagen knee that landed, I'm not too sure a lot of guys would be able to take that knee.
Sure.
It was a perfect fight, but then again, we're talking about Frankie Edgar, who had the ability to absorb damage to get through that and come back and win fights. We've seen that time and time again. We did not see that in the Corey Sandhagen fight. We've seen him get hit with a big shot and lights out.
Done.
That was
Done.
it. He was slept. That was his body saying, don't want any more of this shit. So I think with Marlon Vera, he does. I think I can't see Vera going in there and ending him with one shot, but maybe a cumulative level of damage is what Vera is going to look for here on the feet, and he's going to be looking to try and sprawl and ball. I'd be very surprised if Frankie Edgar doesn't go in and do what he likes to do so well, and that's mix up his wrestling, which opens up some strikes on the feet as well. But I mean, the dream case scenario for a lot of guys here, and every Frankie Edgar fan, is for him maybe to get a win here and leave those gloves in the octagon. But I mean, I don't know. I just hope that he doesn't devastatingly get knocked out again.
Robbie, have you got anything to add? Or should we move to picks?
You can move to picks, and my pick is going to be Marlon Vera by devastating knockout.
I think it'll be a close-ish first round, but Vera will get the better of it. I think then he just turns it up. You may see Frankie start panic wrestling. Vera is no slouch on the ground, got a fantastic guillotine, and is a scrambly boy when it hits the mats, right? So I don't think Frankie is going to be able to hold him down and land the shots that we saw maybe against Yair Rodriguez, for instance. I don't think it's going to be similar to that. And I think on the feet, he's just too long. He's too hungry. He's too young, and it's too durable. And I think we'll see a late finish here by Vera, round 3, late round 2, something like that. Ian?
Yeah, both you guys are hit the nail pretty much on the head. I'm going to go for maybe a slightly different outcome. And that would be Marlon Vera to win by decision, which would ultimately be a success for Frankie Edgar if he was to last these 3 rounds and put in a good close fight. I think Vera is longer and will be able to utilize that long teep kick and his jab as well on the feet, when I think Frankie will have some difficulties getting in the inside. I don't think that unless Vera lands something spectacular, whether it be a head kick or another flying knee, I cannot see Vera putting Frankie Edgar out with his hands, but you never know. Some things can happen, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happened either, but I'm just not expecting it. And I would say Marlon Vera is going to win this by a decision.
All right. Well, we'll move on to maybe my pick for fight of the night. And I think this is the second to last fight on the main card, or maybe this rounds out the main card. And that is Shane Burgos versus Billy Quarantillo. I'll just run through my very quick thoughts. Shane Burgos only loses to the elite level. I don't think Billy Quarantillo is elite level now or probably ever. Billy Quarantillo lost in his last fight to Gavin Tucker, and I think Shane Burgos is a better version of Gavin Tucker than Gavin Tucker is. On that basis, somebody disagree with me. Go.
Yeah, I agree with you, but Quarantillo went in there and got a win against Gabriel Benitez earlier on this year, so
yes,
he's snapped. So, yeah, he looked good. But, I mean, I have to agree with you 100%, Harry. When I'm looking at these two fighters and I'm looking at the guys that they have fought in recent years, the level of competition that Burgos has fought in comparison to Billy Quarantillo has been next to none. I mean, Burgos is going in there against killers at the elite level, and he's been holding his own. Yes, he did get knocked out against Barbosa, that kind of strange delayed knockout. Really weird. But normally he is durable. But like, I mean, you're going toe to toe Edson Barbosa. That can happen to you sometimes. Like, so, I mean, I would be confident in Shane Burgos being the better fighter coming into this fight. And I think that this is a good opportunity for him to get into the win column and get himself into the kind of title picture and keep himself at top 10 status in the division.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if we look at the people that he's lost to, Calvin Kattar, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Josh Emmett, nothing wrong with that either. And then Edson Barbosa, nothing wrong with that either. And my only question is, what the fuck was that knockout? And is he okay? You know what I mean? I mean, that knockout was not that long ago, right? It was only 5 months ago. 5 months after being knocked out isn't a great amount of time at all to come back in.
No.
And also, you know, it was a war up until that point, right? It wasn't a back and forth. It wasn't a flash knockout. It was a war.
And Shane Burgos' fights tend to fucking go that way too. You know, he's a guy who bites down on the gum shield, moves forward and looks to land heavy shots. But he does leave himself open for shots as well at the same time. So, you know, if he comes in here a little bit recklessly, I think maybe Quarantillo might be able to catch him coming in, but it's a very, very, very small chance. And I wouldn't be too confident in seeing that happening either.
One bit I want to query. I've forgotten this Burgos Barbosa fight. Was this the one where Shane Burgos would constantly come in, land a few strikes and look to step out the side door instead of pressuring Barbosa like everyone who wins against him ever does?
He tried to beat him at Burgos' own game, and Barbosa just
tit for tat. You can't go fucking tit for tat with Edson Barbosa because he's just too powerful of a striker, and his kick game is way too strong. Like was a horrible game plan against Burgos. It was looked like more accumulative damage, where similar enough to say like Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje, where it was like Ferguson stayed getting hit with big shots, and then finally his mind wanted to go, but his body was telling him no. And I think that's what happened with Shane Burgos in that Barbosa fight too.
That is the fight I'm thinking of then. I mean, the one thing I'd say about that is just does Shane Burgos game plan? Does he game plan at all? I mean, because Barbosa's one of those guys where the book has been absolutely written on how to fight him.
Mm.
And the fact that you don't follow through with that plan kind of tells me that maybe you're not going to be you're not going to be picking a style against a fighter. That said, I'm not sure actually how much difference that makes about this particular fight.
Wait, just to kind of to piggyback on that as well, is that, like, you know, fighters might go in there with a certain level of game plan too until they get smacked into the face and they might know what's going on. So they just resort back to what they're used to and they kind of go into zombie mode. So we might have seen a little bit of that with Shane Burgos in that fight.
I agree with that. I also think that Burgos is so if we were to talk about like athlete, fighter, or what the fuck's the other one? Martial artist, right? Burgos is a fighter.
I think it was just athlete and athlete, fighter, artist. If you're talking about is that Dean Thomas? Was it him talking about that?
Yeah. It's like, if it's the three, he's a fighter, right? He's absolutely a fighter. So he could be like working in camp, getting a game plan, goes in there, Barbosa waxing. He's like, fuck this. Like, let's just throw down. And that's not a way to win fights, but it is fun, you know? So let's move to picks. I am taking a Shane Burgos decision. I think Billy Quarantillo is a very tough guy. He'll hang himself in there. I think we'll see some grappling exchanges. But overall, I think Shane Burgos just hits way harder. And especially in the judges' eyes, that's what we're looking for. So a Shane Burgos decision for me. Ian.
Yep, if I could have explained it anyway, it would have been exactly like that. I think that he'll be landing the bigger, heavier shots all fight, and he's going to go on and win a decision.
Robster.
We'll go Shane, but I think he can get a finish. Just a late finish. He does hit a lot harder.
He does.
I mean, it's not so much that I think he's going to go and just blow him out the water in the first round, but 15 minutes is a long time when you got someone like that.
It's true. It's true. All right, we'll move on to maybe the poorest treated prospect outside of Jai Herbert in the UFC, and that's Edman Shabazayen versus Nassourdine Imavov, who is a Russian striker fighting out of France. So that's that, I guess. Edman Shabazayen has had a tough fucking run, isn't he? Jesus, I'm just looking at his record here again. Antonio Jones, Darren Stewart, Charles Bird, Jack Marshman, Brad Tavares, Brunson, and Hermanson. Fucking hell. And then now he's getting put in against a fella who looks, by all intents and purposes, as, you know, a decent enough prospect. Absolutely murdered Ian Heinisch last fight out, right?
I'm just wondering what Edman Shabazayen is after doing to the UFC brass here, to be honest.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck does the guy have to do to get a break here? I mean, yeah, you might not recognize Imavov, but I can tell you something for nothing. The way he handled Ian Heinisch, he looked massively, massively impressive in that fight. And this is not an easy fight for Edman Shabazayen. I thought after that Derek Brunson fight that you'd take a massive step back with Edman Shabazayen because he looked massively out of his depth and he got massively exposed in that fight, which is going to give these elite level fighters that kind of cannon fodder to go in there and put his back against the wall. So, I mean, Edman Shabazayen has gone in the space of maybe a year and a half to 2 years to being one of the top prospects in the division, to be close to coming on. If he loses this fight, this will be his third loss in a row. Mm-hmm. And he could be facing the exit door if he doesn't get the job done here. Now, I don't think he will get cut if he loses this fight, but if he doesn't get the win here, we seriously need to be looking at putting him in against lower unranked guys and let him build his game a little bit more.
Yeah. Someone thinks that I think someone thinks that Shabazian needs to go. Because that's not, it's when it's the third fight in a row, is that clearly someone's going like, this is your chance. We're going to consider that. And then, you know, this is going to be the sort of sticking point of his career for the next couple of years.
I'm just wondering what you guys think in regards to like, who do you point the finger at for that? Like, I mean, does the discussion not happen with his team? Like, I mean, I'm of the opinion that fighters need to be protected from themselves, because they'll get themselves into a mentality where they'll think they can beat the world, but fighters are delusional and they train themselves to be delusional. So, I mean, it takes a certain time. And you could talk about the same thing when you're talking about Frankie Edgar and the retirement. Like, it's like, what's his team doing, or what conversations are being had behind the scenes? And I think you could say the same about Edman Shabazayen here, is that what kind of conversations are here? Or is it a thing that he performs well in the gym, but simply can't do it on the night when he gets in there? Because it can happen with some fighters as well. But I really think that this is a little bit more than he can chew in this fight. I would have liked to seen him against another kind of unranked kind of. I mean, on paper, Imavov looks like an unranked, not as experienced guy, but there's better options for Shabazayen in the welterweight division right now rather than Imavov, and I think that he's going to have it all to do in this fight.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I mean, I kind of got sidetracked. I mean, I guess the question I had was, who does it boil down to in this position? What do you guys think?
So the UFC's job is to make fights, right? So I think the UFC has to take some blame. However, they can't take the largest proportion of blame, because their job is to offer a fight to Edman Shabazayen. They have a contract with Shabazayen that says, we will offer you this amount of fights in a calendar year. Yeah. If you take them, that's up to you. If you do not, that is up to you. Right? How many times does Dana say, oh, you could fight if you want to? The UFC don't have any remit whatsoever to be kind when it comes to giving matches, giving fights. I think all of the blame has to come to Edman Shabazayen's team, right? If you go in there, okay, cool. Everything was building nicely. You go out, you finish Brad Tavares. Nobody does that, yeah? So good, you get a big fight. Fantastic. That big fight comes out, doesn't look good against Brunson. Cool. There, as you've already said, you take a big old step back. You go back to a Charles Byrd type level, a Darren Stewart type level. Maybe what should have happened is a Kevin Holland type fight, right? Even a Kevin Holland type fight now, I'd have been happy with, yeah? Mm-hmm. So they then go in and throw him in against Jack Hermansson, right? Why? No idea. It has to be the team, right? It has to be. Because as you've already said, Shabazayen will be like, I'll take it. Give me a name, I'll take it. I don't care who it is. Just give me a name, I'll fight them. Fine, no problems. The team have to be doing their due diligence. The team have to see that this man, it's fucking dumb. It's really dumb. It's really, really dumb. And I don't like it. Because if we do see Edman Shabazayen get whacked here, what then? Yeah. He's 23 years old,
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense to me why you're throwing him in against Imavov, who absolutely brutalized Ian Heinisch on the ground and now grappled him. And Ian Heinisch that's not easy to do with him either. No, you know what I mean? So I'm thinking that we're going to see the exact same thing from Imavov here. I think he's going to not want to really play around too much on the feet with Shabazayen, and I think he's going to take him down and brutalize him on the ground again.
I agree. And look, there is lots and lots of things said about Glendale Fighting Club and the upper management of Glendale Fighting Club. And I don't think that the way they've handled Shabazayen's career thus far has shone them in any good light whatsoever, I think that was paramount with Ronda. I think that was paramount with the end of Travis's career. It's not impressive. And I think there's a larger point to make here, right? And maybe this is a conversation that Sean and I can have on Speaker's Corner, but that's how do you build, as a coach, how do you build a fighter? As a gym owner, how do you build a fighter? Because we've seen it done properly, right? You look at Conor McGregor, you look at Jack Shaw. I think Jack Shaw is probably the finest example in UK MMA right now. You look at Nathaniel Wood, right? Those guys were built the right way. Nathaniel Wood may be thrown in a little bit too deep in the UFC, but I get it. You have to protect, as you've already said, you have to protect your fighters from themselves. And something that, again, another OG of Irish MMA says, Sean Sheehan, I want to see the best fight the best when they are at their best. So why the fuck am I seeing Edman Shabazayen at 22 years old fighting Jack Hermansson? You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing? He's not John Jones, is he? No, he's not.
No.
Protect your fucking fighters.
Exactly.
We'll move to picks. Robbie?
I think Shabazayen loses by poor management.
Fucking hell. That's so brutal. I love it. Yeah, all right. Ian.
I reckon that we're going to see a TKO win for Imavov in round number 3.
I think he gets it done earlier than that, to be honest.
Round 2, round 3. I'm going to go round 3. I'll give Shabazayen the benefit of the doubt that he might be able to hang on, but there's only so much damage that man will be able to take if he's not able to get up off the mat. It's not if, it's when he gets taken down. It's because it's definitely going to happen in this fight.
Yeah, I think it's round 2 for me. I really do. I mean, we look through Edman Shabazayen's record. There is not a sniff of a submission. Not one sniff. The only submission he's got was his first and only amateur MMA fight, which was a guillotine in 20 seconds. That means your man's run across the cage, tries to double leg him, and fallen into a guillotine. That doesn't tell me anything about his fucking grappling. Sorry, that's not true. He rear naked choked Jack Marshman. But other than that, yeah, not a ton of grappling. And against the level of grappling that Imavov will bring in, it's going to be a tough night, I think. But look, don't get me wrong. I'd love to see Edman Shabazayen prove me wrong, go in there and absolutely obliterate him. That'll be fantastic. But the problem's going to be if he does go in there and obliterate him, it'll be the Jack Hermansson rematch in 3 months. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Anyway. Right.
I think Edman Shabazayen will be doing well if he doesn't get caught after this. And I hope that he doesn't get caught. That's not what I want. But what I really do want to see, like, what happens if he goes out there and gets the win against Imavov?
That's what I'm saying.
What the fuck are we going to, what are we going to do again? Throw him to the fucking wolves again? Because he's still, I know for now, at 22 years of age, he's still not ready for that.
Yeah, I mean, he's 23 now.
I'm very curious.
Like, yeah, he goes out, smashes Imavov, and they're like, let's do the Jack Hermansson rematch. No.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest,
cool the Jets.
If I'm Edman Shabazayen, it might be worth getting cut and going to PFL. You know what I mean? Go to PFL or go to Bellator, because the Bellator middleweight isn't amazing either, right? You know, you've got a ton of fighting experience there. The upper echelon is like Fabian Edwards, John Salter, these kind of guys. You know, there's lots and lots of fighters for you to cut your teeth on there. And then let's say you become the fighter at 25, 26, whatever it is. You could always find your way back to the UFC. But anyway.
Or we could just keep him in the fucking UFC and give him like proper, like more even matchups. I mean, I don't know. I just, it's a frustrating thing for me to see. Just not lower, like competition that is at the same level as him.
Yes.
Like what Darren Stewart, like what Harry said before, like those are the perfect fights for him now.
He's not about to get those unless he moves management though, because there's no reason that his management are going to miraculously start making good decisions after this point when they haven't been up until now. He's going to have to move to get that kind of good management.
It's true.
100%.
Right, so let's move on to an actual well-managed fight. And that's Iaquinta versus Bobby Green. From this point on, let's rattle through these a little bit quickly. But Iaquinta, Bobby Green. I mean, to be honest, I don't really care about breaking this down technically. I just think it's really fun. I think it's going to be an absolute barrel of fun, this fight. Both boys, Bobby Green, you never know what he's going to bring. Bobby Green's like a beta Tony Ferguson. He doesn't even know what he's going to throw until he throws it. You know what I mean? And Iaquinta, I think Iaquinta's actually improved over the last little while, which is rare to see. And the same for Bobby Green, to be honest. I think both of them have kind of gotten to that point where they've rounded out their style. They kind of know who they are as fighters now. They know who they are as men. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to see the grappling exchanges in this one, to be honest.
I'm actually shocked that Bobby Green's last fight was against Dan Hooker as well. And he held his own quite well in that fight. Yeah, he lost, but he went to decision with Hooker, who was a really good striker. And I mean, Iaquinta wouldn't be known for his striking in comparison to what Dan Hooker has, obviously, but he is a decent fighter. He's a fun fighter to watch. But Bobby Green always ends up in good fights, like entertaining fights.
You mean Rafael Fiziev, right? Not Dan Hooker.
Right. Oh crap! I'm looking at Iaquinta. Sorry, excuse me.
That makes more sense to me.
I can't believe
I'm fucking mad.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, I meant to talk about Iaquinta. I couldn't believe that his last fight was against Dan Hooker. I said
sure.
Bobby
Okay,
Green
I'm with you there. With you there.
But
I couldn't believe
Bobby
that either.
Sorry, like I mean, Bobby Green is always in good fights. Doesn't take himself too seriously either. Great wrestler, but chooses to fight with his hands down. Talks a lot of shit. Always is in close fights. Bobby Green, win or lose, always in close fights. We're always scratching our heads at the end of Bobby Green fights, wondering who won that. And I mean, it's always going to be fun watching King Bobby Green in there. It's always fun watching Al. I'm glad that he's back. Hopefully he'll be looking to put a bit of a run together in the lightweight division. It'll be interesting to see what he brings to the table. I think he's quite a while. Like I said, that Dan Hooker fight was in 2019, so he's been away for quite some time. And on the other end of the stick, Bobby Green has been very active now, so we don't know whether that's going to help or hinder Iaquinta, but this is going to be a fantastic fight.
I agree. And actually, I think your point is relevant for both fighters. It's interesting that Iaquinta went in there against Dan Hooker and didn't get blown out of the water. And in the same vein, Bobby Green went in there and made Rafael Fiziev look like a human. You know what I mean?
Too. Mm-hmm.
Like Fiziev went in there and everyone was like, holy fuck, this motherfucker is like on the fast train to title shots. And Bobby Green went in there and said, hold my fucking beer, right? And, you know, I'm not saying that Fiziev won't get to that level. I'm sure he will do. But Bobby Green showed that with a little bit of veteran nous and a little bit of knowledge, you can turn these absolute murderers into humans. And that, I think,
absolutely. And I think that Bobby Green has a style that is very, very hard for fighters to figure out too. And that's why we are always seeing him in these close contests as well. So credit to Bobby Green. Like, he's been around for a fucking shit long time. I always enjoyed watching him fight. I think he's a breath of fresh air in the lightweight division. And I'm looking forward to seeing this one too.
Without looking at topology, can somebody guess when Bobby Green's debut was?
I would say 2014.
Okay, Robbie?
20. You say you throw me off because now I know it's shocking. I know it's going to be shockingly old. So yeah, I'm going to go 2013.
2008.
Whoa, that's crazy. I knew he was around for a long time, but that is crazy.
I was still in secondary school when he made his debut.
Wow.
Yes.
That's crazy. Oh, wait. when he made his debut. Oh, I thought you meant UFC debut. Sorry.
No. When he made his UFC debut, that was 2013.
Yeah. So that's why I guess 2014. His actual professional debut. Yeah, I probably would have went back further than that. But it's crazy. He's been around a long ass time, man.
He really has.
And he's been fighting good. He's been fighting good level guys throughout his UFC career as well. Like, I mean, he's always fighting in the top 15, and it's a credit to him that he's still there doing the fucking damn thing.
He's got a good few fights on him. Like
James Krause, Pat Healy, Josh Thompson, Barboza, Poirier, Magomedov, Vanata, Draco Close, Trinaldo, Guida, Vanata again.
40 fights. That's a lot for a lightweight, especially.
Yeah. He's been around the block. Anyway, right. Let's move to picks. Robbie, who you got?
I think the people win a fun fight. I don't know. I think Iaquinta will take it, but I just, this is actually the one I'm least confident on out of anything. I think this will just be fun. I've no idea about how they technically match up, to be quite honest.
So my pick is, if Bobby Green comes in and sets the pace, I think he'll win. I think Iaquinta, however, has underrated boxing. So if Bobby comes in and, is that hands low, loose style, and Al's able to figure him out early, Al will win. But I could also see a split decision all over this fight, just because of the way Bobby fights, Ian?
This is a toss of a coin for sure. I think anyone is going to take this decision. It's going to be a close fight. I'm curious to see what Iaquinta brings to the table, having been 2 years out of the octagon. What has he been working on? Is he going to have a new couple of wrinkles added to his game right now? I would probably go by decision. Iaquinta is going to win this fight, but it's going to be razor close.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll very, very quickly, I'll just run through some of them and then we'll talk about, well, maybe none of them, but we'll run through. So Andreas Michailidis is fighting Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira in the UFC at 3-1 is probably way too soon. Although Michailidis seems like he's been handpicked to not give too much trouble. Nice, easy entry matchup. Alex Pereira is obviously famous for being a fantastic kickboxer. Very, very storied career in glory. And the selling point for this, and the reason why he's been fast-tracked to the UFC, is because he's knocked out Israel Adesanya. He also absolutely brutalized. Wait, no, that's not the same guy. Never mind. I got him mixed up with the fellow that knocked out Sage Northcott. Ignore me.
Sydney Outlaw.
Sydney Outlaw. No, not that fella. Who's the guy that knocked out
There's a few guys that are after knocking out Sage Northcott.
The guy it was either Ryzen or it was in Japan, and he got absolutely murdered. I'm just looking him up. What's his name? Cosmo Alexandre, that guy. The guy that literally broke his face.
Oh, in one.
Yeah, in one. That's it. You're right. So, I mean, look, we'll see what happens. Obviously, Pereira's a really good striker. The method is take him down, lay on him, and see what happens. Who knows if he's got any jiu-jitsu? We're going to find out. The one I'm really interested in is Jordan Williams, Ian Gary. Now, there is nobody on this podcast better to talk about Ian Gary than his namesake, Mr. Ian O'Neill. If people don't know about Ian O'Gary, Jesus Christ, it might as well be. It might as well be.
That's the cloned version of myself and Ian Gary in a couple of years' time. Ian O'Gary.
If people, Robbie, don't know about Ian Gary, please tell us.
I do actually know about Ian Gary.
No way.
Good for you, anyway. Robbie. I mean, we've been very hot on Ian Gary for many years now. You look at his entry into the sport and his first ever professional fight, which was against James Sheehan,
who's a monster,
was also a fucking really good fighter. And Ian Gary done the business there. It was a close fight. And that, he went 3 rounds on his first fight with a really close fighter and got the decision win. But after that, it was pretty home and hose. He picked up wins in each of his last 5 fights out of 6, and he went in there and got a really dominant decision against Jack Grant to pick up the title coming into this. Look, you don't want to get too excited about Irish fighters as an Irishman, because we were really spoiled with the fact that the first big guy to come out of Ireland was Conor McGregor, and he turned into a superstar. I don't know if we can expect that same superstar status, or I think it's unfair to kind of compare anybody else to that. Although Ian Gary is very happy to compare himself. He would call Conor McGregor a big influence in his career. Look, Ian Gary has passed every single test that he has had so far in his career with flying colours. He's knocked out guys that have looked brilliant. You look at the Figlaks, how good they've been. Ian Gary went out there and rear naked choked Matthias Figlak in 1 round. Matthias Figlak is a future Cage Warriors champion, 100%. I think. George McManus made him look real good, look real amateur as well. And George McManus was a tough, durable fighter, but he got put away with the punches and the head kicks as well in round 2. Couldn't last the pace with him there. Lawrence Tracy, another ground and pound win, easy win. Then it was the big test against Rostam Akman, who is a former UFC veteran who had been in the UFC for 3 or 4 fights and who had gone to decisions with really good fighters there as well. So this was the real true test for Ian Gary, and he's come up and he passed that with flying colours too, a highlight reel knockout. What really got me excited and what I really seen was the build up to the Jack Grant fight, the mental fortitude that he showed and the mental strength that he showed before that fight with everything that went on. And during that fight, I watched the documentary that he had, and he had a pretty bad knee injury going into that fight where he wasn't able to train for about 6 weeks of camp. Also, he split with his gym a week out from that fight and went and took the fight as well and won pretty easily against Jack Grant, and now grappled and dominated a guy who is very, very good grappler. Like, you guys would talk a lot better than what I would about the kind of level of grappling that Jack Grant possesses. So for me, Ian Gary has the skills to do really well inside the UFC, and he also has the mental side of the game, which is also important when you're going in there. On top of that, he handled the situation with his injury and with his gym so well, the way he went in there and just got that title. And I think that's going to stand to him. Now, on top of that, he's over at Sanford MMA, which is one of the best gyms in the world right now. And he's training partners with the likes of Vicente Luque, with Mike Chandler, all those sharks. And it's the classic saying, iron sharpens iron. I think it will be a good move for him overall. We're really excited about Ian Garry. I do think that Ian Garry can go all the way. I do think that he is championship material, but things can happen in the mixed martial arts world and we just don't know. But not looking too far ahead, this fight is going to be a very winnable fight for him. I reckon Ian Garry is better in all levels of aspects of his game in comparison to Jordan Williams. And that's no disrespect to Jordan Williams. It's not a slight on him, but we're fucking talking about a serious, serious fighter here in Ian Garry, and one that I'm really excited to see progress inside the UFC. And it's great to see Irish MMA back in the map and back in the UFC. It'll be great to see the tricolours in the octagon again, and for somebody to be carrying it that's not called Conor McGregor.
I need to see the slowest of slow rolls with Ian Garry. And let me explain why I think that. I was actually way more impressed with the James Sheehan and Figlak wins than I was with the Rostam Akman and Jack Grant wins. When I saw Rostam Akman walk into that cage, I was like, oh, this fella's not here to win. Mm-hmm. Like, he didn't look like he was.
And that's not Ian Garry's fault either.
No,
he has to beat what's in front of him.
And he absolutely destroyed him. Mm-hmm. And with Jack Grant as well, I felt as though in that fight, Ian looked fantastic and Jack did nothing to make him not look that way, right? Now,
I'll agree with that.
I thought what was very interesting in that fight, though, is even when it got to positions that should have been Jack's wheelhouse, Ian dealt with them fantastically. And when Jack put Ian in positions of danger that other fighters would have been further in danger, Ian again did so brilliantly well. I think the main thing I take from the Jack Grant fight is everything that you spoke about outside of the cage. The camp split, the injury, the lack of training, and he still went in there and he still dominated the person that was in front of him. That to me is invaluable, right? The time out at Sanford MMA is only going to have done him good. I do think it's a shame that he split from his team. It felt like that was a real harmonious, salt of the earth, ground up relationship. And I hope one day that personally they can reconcile those relationships. But if you're going to pick a place to go that's not your home gym, Sanford MMA is not a bad place to pick, is it? Let's be honest. And I echo actually all the statements that you make about Jordan Williams, that Ian Garry should absolutely dominate him in every facet of this game. But as and when Ian Garry goes in here and does fantastically well, he's only 7-0, would then be 8-0. He's only 23. There's no rush, right?
No.
There's absolutely no rush. How many times have we heard on the Serum MMA podcast, either Graham or Sean say McGregor had 15 fights before he went to the UFC, right? Mm-hmm. And then when he went to the UFC, he had 6 fights before he fought Jose Aldo, 5 fights, whatever it was, right? Like, there's no need to rush. The top of that division at welterweight is insane. Insane. Murderer's row. I don't want to see Ian Garry anywhere near anyone in the top 5, top 8 of that welterweight rankings for at least 2 years, right? Let's build him. Let's build his stock. The man looks amazing. He fights brilliantly. He's a human highlight reel. He talks really well. Let's build him slowly. Let's build him slowly and treat him like the superstar that he could be. Robbie?
I know Ian Garry, but I don't know him as well as you guys do. Really, I first heard about him at the Jack Grant fight because it was the Cage Warriors trilogy, right? Yeah. And I paid a lot of attention to that. And I like that fight. That was a great fight. Went back and watched a lot of his stuff. But I don't know what I'm going to add to this. You guys know a lot about him, and I think I'm just going to be pissing in the wind if I try and do anything.
I remember watching. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Harry. It's all good.
So I remember listening to the Sir MMA podcast a few times, and before Ian Gary made his debut, Sean was saying, like, I've watched this guy fight at amateur. He's somebody to watch. Looks like a really good prospect. But also James Sheehan's a really good prospect. This is great matchmaking, whatever. And I watched it and I was like, fuck me, both of these lads are great. Like, both of these lads can bang. And then from then I was like, right, when James Sheehan fought at the last Cage Warriors, he was amazing. He was fantastic. Again, brilliant fighter. And it just goes to show you, I think, the level. And that's why I'm most impressed by those early wins. Because the same for Mike Figlak. Mike Figlak is a fucking murderer. That fella will probably be in the UFC within 2 years as well, right? James Sheehan will probably be in the UFC within 4 years. He's still very early in his career. Like, you know, these fellas are very, very good oppositions and wins that will only mature well, I think. Whereas the others, you know, it is what it is. But he passed his tests with flying colours.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think going in here, if it goes the way that I expect it to go and Ian dominates and gets a fantastic win, I just want to see the slow roll. And I mean that from his management, the Sanford MMA influence, and the UFC. Like, if we see Ian Gary go from this guy, little step up, to fucking, I don't know, Hamzat Chimaev, I'm not going to be impressed.
Yeah. I don't want to see that either. And I mean, the signs are good when we're talking about management of a fighter here. I mean, after the gym split, I think that, you know, it worked out pretty well. I don't think he could have ended up in any better place, to be fair. And that would be down to management. And also his first fight is that you look at Reece McKee, who came in, and look at who his first fight was.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I mean, that's an important aspect of it. Like, and it's protecting fighters from themselves. Like, it wasn't so long ago that Ian Gary was talking to Sean Sheehan ahead of Cage Warriors or even the Rustam Akman fight, where he was talking about going in and fighting Kamaru Usman. You know what I mean? He has that sense of belief about himself and he thinks he could beat Usman. Now, that's what I mean by and I don't doubt that maybe sometime down the line he might give a challenge, but not right now. But that's what I mean about fighters needing to be protected from themselves, because you'll build up that level of a mentality about yourself that you really and truly will think that you can beat anybody in the world. And that's an important thing to have going into fight in the cage. And Ian Gary has that sense of belief. He knows what he's good at. He's very marketable. He speaks well. He's a superstar in the making, guys. He just needs to be matched right. He needs to be built properly, and he's going to do fucking great things in the UFC. And me as an Irishman, we have to stay impartial, but I cannot hide my excitement when it comes to Ian Gary. I'm really excited to see this man perform in the UFC. Even at 8 fights deep or 7 fights deep, he deserves to be there right now. He's good enough, but he needs to be looked after when he gets in there, and he doesn't need to be thrown to the wolves. And we can just wait and see how it all plays out. We'll talk about this fight right now, and then we'll talk about what's next. Because if he goes in there and starts starching guys as well, I mean, the level of competition is going to raise up. The UFC will have no choice, but hopefully everything is managed correctly, and hopefully he doesn't get thrown to the wolves too early. And it's going to be a fantastic journey, and I'm excited to see it.
Prediction, Ian?
First round knockout for Ian Gary, and if you have some money, put it fucking down on that as well.
Yeah, I agree with that, Robbie.
I'm not going to disagree.
All right. The other fights on the card, we've got CJ Vieira versus Ori Osborne, Gian Vellante versus Chris Barnett, Alexa McCaw, Kamur versus John Allen, Phil Hawes, Chris Curtis. Overall, a pretty stacked card, gents.
Oh, I think you missed one out. What's his name? Melsik.
So Melsik Baghdadarian, his fight is off with TJ Laramie. TJ Laramie is poorly. They are yet to get a replacement for him yet.
I really just wanted to hear you make an attempt at that surname. And you know what? I think you nailed it, mate.
Absolutely nailed it. How long were you practicing before this podcast with that name, Harry? Come on, tell us the
I've
truth.
been saying it all day.
We did little warm-ups beforehand.
Yeah. The reason why I know of him actually is there's a grappler called Edwin Najmi who is he runs a gym in Tarzana in California, and he has all of the Armenian fighters there and trains with them and whatever. Like, he brings them in, helps them with their grappling, all that sort of stuff. Arman Saryukin's been there. Melsic's been there. A couple of other fighters have been there as well. And that's how I heard of Melsic before.
It's a scene that's really exploding right now. We're seeing a lot of Georgians coming through and a couple of Armenians as well. I mean, Saryukin is a fantastic fighter who's going to be a top 5 lightweight eventually 100%. In the UFC. And so the scene is getting quite big over there, and we are going. The thing about what I like about the Georgian fighters is that they have, the majority of them, and someone like Saryukin, is that they have the ability to mix up their striking and grappling where one is not overbearing in the other. They just have that perfect mix, and Saryukin is a prime example of that. So I'm sure this guy, if he gets matched up, I'm not too sure if I'm going to want to be the one who's taking the fight against that guy on 1 week's notice if he does get matched up.
100%. Right, we'll round it out. Fight of the night picks. I am going to take. Fuck me. What am I going to take? I'm going to take Burgos Quarantillo. Robbie?
Oh, there's a lot on the main card that could take it, isn't there?
There really is, yeah.
You know what? I'm confident about the co-main. Rose versus Weili.
That was my other one. Ian?
But I'm going to go something different again. And if it goes all 3 rounds, I'm going to go Mike Chandler versus Justin Gaethje fight tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, this, like we talked about at the start of this fucking podcast, guys, any one of these fights could end up being fight of the night. It's a 100%. Fucking phenomenal card. And if you don't normally stay up and watch UFC events, stay up and watch this. Tune in and watch Ian Gary. I'm telling you, he is the next big thing coming out of Ireland, and I'm really excited to see him fight.
Well, on that note, gents, we'll close this off. I thank you both for your time as usual, and for everyone listening, enjoy the fights. Have a great night.